Very good morning to the students of class 9, and we continue with the next part of the video on A Horse and Two Goats written by R.K. Narayan. So let us now scroll up to the page where we had stopped in our third video. This is your fourth video, and today we will try to complete a little more if possible, so that with one more video after this we can finish up with this short story. So video number 4 starts now. Please open your textbooks and please scroll to the page where we had stopped in the last video. So here I am scrolling up, and on your screen you can see page 59, and we had reached page 59, and we were discussing this conversation which was taking place between the foreigner, the red-faced foreigner, and Muni. So the foreigner nodded his head and listened courteously, though he understood nothing. Now this foreigner was not able to understand the words of Muni, because Muni was speaking in Tamil, and this American, he understood only English. So the man is asking Muni, "I am sure you know when this horse was made," said the red man, and smiled ingratiatingly. So he was wanting to know, he is inquisitive. He wants to find out from Muni when this horse statue made of clay, which was seen by him just now, just outside on the outskirts of Muni's village, when it was made. Muni reacted to the relaxed atmosphere by smiling himself and pleaded, "Please go away, sir. I know nothing. I promise we will hold him for you if we see any bad character around." So Muni thinks that the foreigner is asking him about the person who is responsible for the murder. Now we know that there has been a murder in, or rather a rumor is there actually in the market that there has been a murder. And because this foreigner is wearing khaki clothes, so Muni is under the impression that this man is asking him questions or making inquiries about the murder. So Muni is saying that please go away, sir. I have no idea about it, absolutely. And in the event if we know or come to know or find the fellow who is responsible for it, we will definitely hold him and inform the police, so then you can come and arrest him. But as of now, there is no one here, and I have no idea about the murder. So he goes on to say, "And we will bury him up to his neck in a coconut pit if he tries to escape. But our village has always had a clean record. Must definitely be the other village." So Muni tries to put the blame on the neighboring village and says that maybe somebody from that village has committed the murder. Now the red man implored, "Please, please, I will speak slowly. Please try to understand me. Can't you understand even a simple word of English? Everyone in this country seems to know English." So this man is desperate to know about the horse, and Muni is talking about the murder. So a lot of comedy going on in this particular scene, and the man is pleading with Muni, asking him to understand his words. "I have gotten along with English everywhere in this country, but you don't speak it. Have you any religious or spiritual scruples against English speech?" So the man thinks that maybe this man knows English, understands English, but is not trying to respond back in English because he has some religious grudges against English, or maybe English speaking people, or maybe he has some spiritual reasons for which he would not speak in English. So he is trying to reason with Muni, but Muni is not at all able to understand anything that he is saying, and we cannot blame Muni because he has never left his village ever in his life. So how will he know or understand English? Muni made some indistinct sounds in his throat and shook his head, moved his head from side to side. Encouraged, the other went on to explain at length, uttering each syllable with care and deliberation. Presently he sidled over and took a seat beside the old man, explaining, "You see, Last August, we probably had the hottest summer in history. And I was working in shirt sleeves in my office on the 40th floor of the Empire State Building. We had a power failure one day, and there I was stuck for 4 hours. No elevator, no air conditioning. All the way in the train, I kept thinking. And the minute I reached home in Connecticut, I told my wife Ruth, we will visit India this winter. And with that, we come to the next page, that is page 60. It's time to look at other civilizations. Next day, she called the travel agent first thing and told him to fix it. And so here I am. Ruth came with me, but is staying back at Srinagar, and I am the one doing the rounds and joining her later. So, man gives the explanation of why he was visiting India, what made him come to India. He is saying that his wife is also with him, and he has left her in Srinagar. Srinagar is in Jammu and Kashmir, and he has come down south here in Tamil Nadu, and so that's what he's trying to explain. So the foreigners and their lives, American way of life, American terms such as elevator, and then the Empire State Building. At the time when R.K. Narayan wrote this story, the Empire State Building was supposed to be the tallest, probably the loftiest building in New York City, and was the pride of New York. And he claims that his office was situated on the 40th floor of this building. And then one day there was no electricity, and then there was no air conditioning system working, and no elevator working, and he had a tough time that day. So he decided that he will go and see other civilizations. So what a logic. If there is no electricity, you must leave the country and you must make a tour of the world. So we may put it that way. So that is how he came, but his wife is not so keen on traveling. She joined him, no doubt, all the way to India, but then she decided to stay in Srinagar because Srinagar is much colder than Tamil Nadu. So down south it's very, very hot, whereas in Srinagar it's adjacent to the hills or is in the hills and is pretty cold. So being an American, she decided to stay there because she was finding the scenic beauty of Srinagar beautiful, and also the weather very promising, and that's the reason she did not come with her husband all the way to the south. Muni looked reflective. So Muni was, in a thoughtful, pensive mood, as if he was thinking very carefully over the words that have been spoken by this American man. So he looked very reflective at the end of this long oration and said rather feebly, yes, no, as a concession to the other's language, and went on in Tamil. When I was this high, he indicated a foot high. When I was this high, he's pointing at a height of maybe a foot. He said, I had heard my uncle say. So when I was this high, I had heard my uncle say. No one can tell what he was planning to say, as the other interrupted him at this stage to ask, boy, what is the secret of your teeth? How old are you? So Muni has all his teeth in his mouth, and though he's from the village, he has, and he's old, still he has his teeth. So how old are you? Now of course Muni doesn't understand what the man is saying. Muni forgot what he had started to say and remarked, sometimes we too lose our cattle. See where the question is and where the answers are going. The questions and the answers don't match with each other. That's the fun. That's the comedy. That's the humor in the story. Muni forgot what he had started to say and remarked, sometimes we too lose our cattle. Jackals or cheetahs may sometimes carry them off, but sometimes it is just theft from over in the next village. And then we know who has done it. Our priest at the temple can see in the camphor flame the face of the thief. And when he is caught, he gestured with his hands a perfect mincing of meat. So when he is caught, he is, Muni is doing like this, just as you mince meat. So that's what He means to say that the thief, once he's caught, he's beaten up. So you see, on one hand you have the modern first world, and on the other hand you have the poor developing world. So there is a contrast, image of contrast has been set up here by R.K. Narayan. He is trying to give us the two sides or the two faces of human life, the modern American way of life on one hand, and the typical rural life of rural India on the other. And this rural life in particular, Muni's life in particular, is riddled with so many religious and superstitious beliefs, which the American does not really understand, because in their culture these things simply do not exist. The priest can see the thief in the camphor flame. That's only possible in India. So the thief is caught that way. So in the US you have the police investigating and catching the culprit, but here you depend a lot on priests and temples and rites and rituals and superstitious beliefs to catch a thief or to find a lost item. So that is what we have the proof of here. Now the American watched his hands intently and said, "I know what you mean, chop something? Maybe I am holding you up and you want to chop wood. Where is your axe?" So the American man saw Muni doing like this. So he thought maybe Muni wants to chop wood. But if he wants to chop wood, where is his axe? "Hand it to me and show me what to chop. I do enjoy it. Just a hobby. We get a lot of driftwood along the backwater near my house. And on Sundays, I do nothing but chop wood for the fireplace. I really feel different when I watch the fire in the fireplace. Although it may take all the sections of the Sunday New York Times to get a fire started." What does he mean to say? He talks about burning an entire newspaper called the New York Times, and the Sunday New York Times is much more in volume because there are more pages in the Sunday supplements. So he says that although it may take the entire newspaper to start the fire burning in the fireplace, but still when you have chopped the wood, you have a different sensation, a different feeling of pride that the wood which is now burning in the fireplace is actually chopped by you. So that is what he's talking about. And he smiled at this reference. Now what does Muni understand of the Sunday New York Times? Muni has probably never read a newspaper in his life because he is illiterate. He has never been to school. He doesn't know how to read or how to write. Muni felt totally confused but decided the best thing would be to make an attempt to get away from this place. He tried to edge out, saying, "Must go home," and turned to go. Now Muni has had enough. He doesn't want to stay here any longer. He says, "I have to go now." And he just turns around to leave. So with that we come to the end of page 60. We're moving on to page 61. The other seized his shoulder and said desperately. Now the American catches hold of him by the shoulder and says desperately, "Is there no one, absolutely no one here to translate for me?" He looked up and down the road, which was deserted in this hot afternoon. Now obviously there was nobody because they were adjacent to the highway in the middle of nowhere, you could say. The village was far and the traffic was very less in the highway, and this is where these two were talking with each other. The stranger almost pinioned Muni's back to the statue and asked, "Isn't this statue yours? Why don't you sell it to me?" Now the man is making an offer. He wants to buy the statue. He thinks that this horse statue belongs to Muni. The old man now understood that the reference to the horse, thought for a second and said in his own language, "I was an urchin." Urchin means little boy. "This high, about this high, when I heard my grandfather explain this horse and warrior. And my grandfather himself was this high when he heard his grandfather, whose grandfather," so you can understand that this statue of the horse and the warrior must have been there by the highway for many generations. That's the reason why his father, his grandfather, whose grandfather, that means at least 5 to 6 generations. But the other man is not able to understand what Muni is saying. The other man interrupted him. I don't want to seem to have stopped here for nothing. I will offer you a good price for this, he says, indicating the horse. He had concluded without the least doubt that Muni owned this mud horse. Perhaps he guessed by the way he sat on its pedestal, like other souvenir sellers in this country, presiding over their wares. Now in India, people who want to sell things, they sit by the roadside with the things in front of them or the things next to them, and then people stop by and bargain and then buy. So that is what this American has observed ever since he came to India. So he thinks that this statue belongs to Muni. Because in America, people go to departmental stores, they go to Walmart, they go to this, malls or Walmart, or things like that, where they can go and pick up the items they require, put them in a trolley and then carry them to the checkout line and make the payment and go home. But business here in India is on the footpath, by the road, and people who sell, they generally sit with whatever they are selling. So Muni followed the man's eyes and pointing fingers and dimly understood the subject matter, and feeling relieved that the theme of the mutilated body had been abandoned at least for the time being, said again enthusiastically, I was this high when my grandfather told me about this horse and the warrior, and my grandfather was this high when he himself, Muni is repeating the same story. The Tamil that Muni spoke was stimulating even as pure sound, and the foreigner listened with fascination, because he was listening to a foreign language. Tamil was a foreign language to this foreigner, and he was listening with amazement. I wish I had my tape recorder here. Those were the days of tape recorders when this story was written. Had it been today, the foreigner would have taken out his cell phone and would have recorded and made the video of Muni. It was not possible at the time when this story was written, or at the time which is supposed to be as described in the story. So I wish I had my tape recorder here, he said, assuming the pleasantest expression. Your language sounds wonderful. I get a kick out of every word you utter here. He indicated his ears. But you don't have to waste your breath in sales talk. I appreciate the article. The man thinks that Muni is describing the clay horse, because the clay horse belongs to him, and he is describing its quality to the would-be customer, that is the foreigner. So he says, you don't have to describe it so much. I am already appreciative of it, and I want to buy it. You don't have to explain its points. So with that we come to the end of page 61, moving on to page 62. I never went to a school. In those days only Brahmins went to school. So Muni is confessing. He is continuing. The foreigner is thinking that Muni is talking about the horse. But Muni is just talking about himself, his life, his past, his childhood, and the background or the history of the horse statue. At least at one particular point, these two have understood each other, that the foreigner is interested in the horse, and so Muni is telling him about the background of this horse and the warrior. So this conversation is now going in this particular direction. I never went to a school. In those days only Brahmins went to the school. But we had to go out and work in the fields, morning till night, from sowing to harvest time. And when Pongal came, Pongal is a Tamil festival of harvest, and we had cut the harvest, my father allowed me to go out and play with others at the tank. Tank is the pool of water in the village. That is probably the source of water for the village, where they do their bathing and cleaning and washing and everything. So when I have free time, when I used to have free time, I would go and play with the others of my age group near the tank. And so I don't know the Parangi language you speak, and so I don't know the English language you speak. Parangi comes from English. Okay, so that is an Indian way of referring to English. So the language which you speak, I don't know it. Even little fellows in your country probably speak the Parangi language, but here only learned men and officers know it. Now this is very funny because that's their language. So obviously in their country even the small children speak that language because that's their mother tongue. But for Muni it's really amazing because here only educated, learned people, officers, they speak this language, whereas he has heard, Muni knows that in foreign countries even the small kids speak in this language. What he doesn't understand is that it is their language, so they will obviously speak in that language. The foreigner laughed heartily, took out another cigarette and offered it to Muni, who now smoked with ease. Now this is the second time the foreigner gives him a smoke, deciding to stay on if the fellow was going to be so good as to keep up his cigarette supply. So Muni, because he was greedy for the cigarettes, as he had not smoked cigarettes for ages, in fact he does not even remember when he had smoked last, and so the first time when he was trying to smoke he was coughing so badly. Now he is smoking with ease and he is thinking that now he should continue to stay here with this foreigner so long as this foreigner continues to give him cigarette after cigarette. The American now stood up on the pedestal in the attitude of a demonstrative lecturer and said, running his finger along some of the carved decorations around the horse's neck, speaking slowly and uttering his words syllable by syllable. Now this time the foreigner is trying to speak very slowly, uttering each and every word very carefully so that he should be able to make Muni understand what he is saying. So, syllable by syllable. I could give a sales stock for this better than anyone else. This is a marvelous combination of yellow and indigo. Indigo is deep blue color. Though faded now, how do you people of this country achieve these flaming colors? Now the foreigners, when they come to India, they are always fascinated by the bright colors of various things, various articles, and sometimes even the buildings and even the architecture and the statues and fountains and so many relics that you typically traditionally find in India, which are so colorful. So that is what amazes them, and that's why this man is saying, how do you people in India manage to get these flaming colors? Muni now assumed that the subject was still the horse and not the dead body, and so he said, this is our guardian. It means death to our adversaries. Adversaries are enemies. So this horse is the horse of our guardian. The warrior or the statue of the warrior which you see standing in front of the horse is our guardian. He protects us from our enemy or enemies. At the end of Kali Yuga, this world and all other worlds will be destroyed, and the Redeemer will come in the shape of a horse called Kalki. This horse will come to life and gallop and trample down all bad men. So the concept, the Hindu concept of the different yugas, so you have Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dapar Yuga, and then you have finally Kali Yuga. So he says that we believe here that when the end of Kali Yuga comes, Kalki at the end of Kali Yuga will arrive riding a horse, and he will destroy all those who are bad, all those who are evil. While he was brooding on this unpleasant vision, the foreigner utilized the pause to say, I assure you that this will have the best home in the USA. So after saying that much, maybe Muni had taken a pause to think about the possibility of Kalki arriving at the end of Kali Yuga. And during that pause, the foreigner says, I assure you that I am going to preserve this horse statue very carefully and with utmost care in the USA. I'll push away the bookcase, I love books and I'm a member of 5 book clubs. And the choice and bonus volumes mount up to a pile really in our living room, as high as the horse itself. So he says that I will make room for this horse statue inside my living room. I have a lot of books. I am the member of 5 book clubs, but I am going to put those books aside, the bookshelf aside, make room so that I can place this statue in my living room. But they'll have to go. Ruth may disapprove, my wife may not like it, but then I will convince. Muni continued. Now we have finished with page 62 and going on to 63. Muni continued his description of the end of the world. Our Pandit discoursed at the temple once how the oceans are going to close over the earth in a huge wave and swallow all of us. This horse will grow bigger than the biggest wave and carry on its back only the good people and kick into the floods the evil ones. Plenty of them about, he said reflectively. Do you know when it is going to happen? He asked. So perhaps the foreigner can tell him. That's what Muni thinks. So he's asking him, do you know when it is going to happen? Foreigner now understood by the tone of the other that a question was being asked and said, I am not a millionaire, but a modest businessman. My trade is coffee. So this man, he replies, I am not a millionaire. I am just a small businessman and my business is coffee business. Amidst all this wilderness of obscure sound, Muni caught the word coffee. Now whatever the man said, he couldn't understand that, but the word coffee, which he has mentioned, Muni caught that word and said, if you want to drink kapi, because he's South Indian, so coffee becomes kapi, drive further up in the next town. They have Friday market and there they open kapi hotels. So I learned from passers-by. Muni has not been there, but he has heard from people that coffee is sold in stalls set up in the Friday market in the next town. He has heard from people and so he shares this knowledge with the foreigner. The foreigner said, I repeat, I am not a millionaire. Ours is a modest business. After all, we can't afford to buy more than 60 minutes of TV time in a month, which works out to 2 minutes a day. That's all. Although in the course of time, we'll maybe sponsor a 1-hour show regularly if our sales graph continues to go up. 60 minutes of TV time per month for advertising his brand of the coffee which he sells. He says that we cannot afford more than that. We cannot possibly have money more than that to have more ads than 60 minutes in a month, which means 2 minutes a day. So our ads come only for 2 minutes in a day on television. We don't have so much of money that we can run the ads more and more. But then we are hopeful that if our business goes well, then in future we'll be sponsoring shows. Then the visitor, feeling that he had spent too much time already, said, tell me, will you accept 100 rupees or not for the horse? Now he's offering the money. I'll give you $100. Will you accept it? I'd love to take the whiskered soldier also, but no space for him this year. I'll have to cancel my air ticket and take a boat home, I suppose. Ruth can go by air if she likes, but I will go with the horse and keep him in my cabin all the way if necessary. So the man is planning to take the horse by boat. Boat in the sense, ship. He will cancel his flight ticket because such a huge horse statue cannot go in a flight, in a domestic flight or in an international flight. So he decides that he will travel by ship, and in the ship he will carry this statue. And he will not take the warrior statue, he will only take the horse's statue. So, and he will send his wife Ruth back home to America by air, whereas he will travel by ship with the statue. Then he says, and he smiled at the picture of himself voyaging across the seas, hugging this horse. He added, I will have to pad it with straw so that it doesn't break. Now when you are transporting something fragile, you have to pack it up properly, and that's what he is saying that he is going to do with straw. He will pack it up. And then he says, I have my station wagon, as you see. I can push the seat back and take the horse in it if you will just lend me a hand with it. So he says, I want to put the statue remove it from the pedestal here. Now the statue is in front of you. You can see the statue with the warrior in front of the statue. So only difference is that in the story it is described that the front legs of the horse are raised in the air and the head is raised up. But here I could manage to get only this one from the internet, and this is presumably the statue of Kalki with his horse. So I have put it here purposely so that you can see and get an idea about it. And then down below you can see the pedestal. I had shown this to you earlier in the introduction of this short story. So he says to Muni, please help me put this statue inside my vehicle, the station wagon. I can push the seat and make room for it, and I need a hand. I alone cannot carry it, so you could possibly give me a hand and help me lift the statue in my car. So this is where we stop, page 63, end of page 63. And in our last video, which will come up in our next English class, we will be finishing off with this short story. So that's it for now. Thank you very much.